Protesters are expected to surge into the streets of Iran's capital today. Despite violence, counter-demonstrations, and tight restrictions on the news media, the opposition may be gaining strength. CBS News correspondent Elizabeth Palmer has the latest from Tehran.
Iran's Revolutionary Guard said through state news services today that Iranian websites and bloggers are going to have to remove any materials that, as they said, create tension, or they'll face legal action. Now Facebook, MySpace, and Twitter have all been shut down. They've been very powerful organizing tools until lately for the opposition. The city's quiet today after 3 days of rallies and counter-rallies. The biggest one yesterday was for President Ahmadinejad and his landslide win in last Friday's election. The worst period of violence took place over the weekend, and it's reported that at least 7 people died in clashes between Sunday and Monday. Yesterday, there was supposed to be an opposition rally, an official one. The opposition candidate, Mr. Mousavi, called it off, but a mass of young people, nevertheless, guided by Twitter, found their way to an informal demonstration that ended peacefully late in the afternoon. The Supreme Leader last night, in a highly unusual address on state television, told Iranians to stay calm and not to let the election divide the country. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News, Tehran.
Joining me now is Time magazine columnist Joe Klein, who has just returned from Iran and is the author of Time's cover story, which hits newsstands on Friday. Good morning.
Hey, Harry.
Your biggest impression having just come back from there?
Well, it's an amazing country. And one thing Americans don't understand is that it's better educated than most countries in the region, and it's much more middle class. And so you have, and there's a fair amount of political freedom. Even though the election was probably stolen. It's a massive contradiction.
Right. Some of the Iranian experts we've talked to said it's very possible that Ahmadinejad did in fact win because he has so much support from the underclass, from civil servants, from the Republican Guard and the people who have left the Republican Guard. Is it possible he actually did win the election?
Well, you know, I'm an old political reporter, and he was by far the most effective candidate in the race. He won all of the debates that he was in.
Right.
He has big support. Over a week's worth of reporting, I interviewed as many people who supported him as opposed him. I still think, though, there was a heavy finger on the scales, and they wanted to make sure that this thing didn't go into a second round.
So here is this response, then, of these people on the street, and you've got this sort of executive council saying, okay, maybe we'll go ahead and recount some of the disputed votes. Is there a sense there that maybe the genie is out of the bottle, that there's a sense that these people who are protesting are, in fact, out of control?
Well, I think that there's great worry that it will get out of control, although I think the government feels that it is in control, that these protesters are mostly upper middle class and young people, although 70% of Iran is under the age of 30.
Right.
But I think that the government feels that it can pretty much control these protests. The problem is that this has unleashed a real debate within the Iranian establishment. You have powerful forces going up against each other in a way that we have never seen publicly before.
All right, well, let's take a look at our Iranian family tree here, so to speak, because we have the supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei. His henchman is Ahmadinejad. These guys, the Guardian Council, have said, yes, we'll go ahead and relook at these disputed election results. But this guy really is in charge of everything.
Yeah, although there are a couple of other
here's the other guy. Here's our high-tech Rafsanjani, who's one of the richest guys in the country and actually has pulled strings and is the guy who helped Mousavi.
The thing is, these guys really believe in redundancy. There are 2 or 3 of everything.
Right.
There really is. There's a public structure and there's a religious structure. There's a secular army and then there's a religious army, the Revolutionary Guard. There's 2 of everything, and so no one really knows how these various groups. The Guardian Council. There's an Expediency Council that probably should be over here.
And the
there's
Experts
an assembly
Council
of experts
that
up over
he's
there.
in charge of, who could theoretically say, we're maybe not so crazy about you anymore.
Yeah. But there have only been 2 supreme leaders in the history of Iran, Khomeini and Khamenei. It's a job with great job security.
And finally, in the last 10 seconds, is there an opportunity for a Tiananmen moment that might still be to come for these people on the streets?
There's a possibility, but if it comes, it's going to come from the religious hierarchy, not from the streets. It's going to come from Rafsanjani and his friends from the revolution of 1979 turning against this guy and this guy.
Wow, big stuff. Joe Klein, thanks very much for coming in. We really do appreciate it.